Empty mag. Empty mag. Welcome back, everybody. We're going to get into this little bad boy right there. That is the Excommunicado trigger kit from Boogeyman Customs in my Boogeyman Custom Glock 34 build. So this thing's got the Boogeyman cut, the Boogeyman flatline barrel, and now it has that Boogeyman Customs Excommunicado trigger in it. Before we go any further, a huge shout out to one of my Patreons, Pete, for sending in this trigger for the channel. I really appreciate what you did for me over there, bud, and all the rest of the Patreons as well. Now, when it comes to aftermarket triggers for the Glock, we have got a ton of options. This is the factor trigger right there. You've got the Apex triggers like this Freedom Flatty in there. You've got some Steel City Arsenal options like in this Polymer 80 build. You've got the Overwatch Precisions, which has always been one of my favorites. And then, of course, one that's very well known is going to be the Agency Arms trigger as well. So, of course, following suit with everything that Boogeyman already does in the Glock world, he came out with a trigger as well. I'm really curious to know if you have experience with any of those other triggers or the Excommunicado here. Let me know in the comments what your feelings were about it and why. And when it comes down to those triggers, each company does something a little bit different to achieve what they want out of the trigger, whether it's changing the geometry in the shoe, adding spring kits, adding connectors, doing adjustable stuff. Every company seems to do things a little bit differently, and that is definitely the case with the Boogeyman, to include a patented design that they now have on how the pins work in this trigger. And because I've done so many trigger reviews and changed things around in so many of these things at certain points in time, I did find a little bit of an issue if you go mixing and matching springs in there like it's a bad pair of socks. We're gonna go ahead and get into this thing and talk about what they did with this trigger. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel, turn the bell notification icons on, and if you're into this stuff, give that video a thumbs up. Of course, check out Shall Not Comply for that 2A Freedom swag. They've taken on my brand and they are shipping out all that clothing as well. We're gonna go ahead and get into this trigger from Boogeyman Customs right now. Let's go ahead and get into this Boogeyman Customs trigger right here and show you guys what it is all about. You can see it's got a very nice look to it, very clean, skeletonized, and I kind of like how they left just a little bit of that machine work showing in there. Solid looking setup, and actually these little, the pins in here, the way they're designed, apparently Boogeyman Customs has a patent on the floating kind of press fit design in there, which is pretty interesting. So let's go ahead and let's show you what you get with this thing, and then we'll do pulls and all that good stuff that you guys are looking for. And we'll throw this slide on there because I want to show you an issue that I discovered messing around with different springs. Okay, so what you're going to get here, as you can see, you got a really nice trigger shoe right there. It's got that Boogeyman logo on it. You're going to get a polished trigger bar, a little bit dirty because I've been out shooting this thing, which is what you guys expect. So you do get the trigger shoe blade safety here that does go all the way flush. You can see right in there, and it does have a very nice Boogeyman logo on that face on it, which is pretty nice. So talking about what we get, you're going to get the shoe, the polished bar, you're going to get the Boogeyman minus connector right here, all of which has been very highly polished and worked. And then you're going to get your trigger spring, which is that bad boy right in there, which is going to give it that lighter pull weight. So one thing before we do the pulls and everything, I want to kind of address with you guys, if you've ever changed striker springs up in your slider or anything like that, you need to pay attention to that because it will affect how these triggers work. Now, being that I had a different trigger in this whole setup right here, I had a different striker spring that I was testing, and I didn't remember that. So because I was testing that, you'll watch when I do the pulls here on this slide, you'll see the trigger will kind of stall right there. That's because of that reduced power spring up in the striker. Not a huge fan of reduced power springs, but I forgot to take that spring out when I was testing another trigger. So we're going to go ahead and take this off, and we are going to do all of the pulls and everything with a full factory slide, this one right here. All right, we're back. Lost my overhead light. So we're going to do all the pulls and everything with the factory slide here so you guys get a 100% true idea of how this is actually going to function. So let's take a look at the take up real quick. You guys can see that is the wall, very smooth into it, little bit of a roll, okay, and then it does break pretty clean. Show you the reset, Resets nice and short. Again, a little bit of a roll and a break. Okay, so talking about this one having the regular factory spring in there, when I pull it and then I ride the trigger out, you'll see even when I let off, it fully resets because I have the factory striker spring. So pay attention to that. We're going to do some pulls on both to show you the difference in what reduced power springs do. But this thing is pulling pretty low. I want to say it's right at the 4 pound to 4.5 pound mark, which is pretty light. So right there you can see we are just at 4 pounds, maybe a hair over. We'll do 3 pulls and then I'll show you what it's like with a reduced striker spring. Okay, we are right there again, almost exactly the same spot. Very consistent. And we'll do our final one here. A little bit over, but still within that range of what I thought it was going to be. Well, let's go ahead and we'll show you what a reduced power striker spring does, even though I don't recommend them because you can get light primer strikes and all that stuff. But we're going to check it out just because I know somebody is going to want to ask. Okay, right there you can see, get the camera to focus in, we're going to be at just over 3 pounds and 6 ounces. That's light, okay. Now let's go again. We'll do 3 pulls. About the same right there. You can see just a little bit over 3 pounds and 6 ounces again. Pretty crazy how consistent this trigger actually is. Woo, and then that one came in low, 3.2. So you can see the difference in what a striker spring in here will do, but it can cause problems with the overall reset and feel of the trigger, and it can make it feel a little mushy. It can just make it feel weird. In all, nice setup here. Give you guys one more good, clean look at this trigger, and then we're going to go ahead and we're going to talk about price, how it feels out on the range, what you get with it, and you know, is this thing worth it compared to everything else out there in the market? I'm absolutely digging what Boogeyman is doing over there, from the slide cuts to the barrels and now that Excommunicado trigger. But like I showed you up close, if you have mixed and matched and changed springs and tried to tune things yourself, you've got to be careful because in that 34 upper, like I showed, I had that reduced power spring and that did cause a reset issue. So make sure you are using only the Boogeyman trigger spring and the factory actual striker spring, or you could cause yourself a little bit of problems out there on the range. And I guess that's just what I get trying to mix and match there like it's a pair of socks, hoping nobody would notice. Now let's go ahead and talk about price on this Excommunicado trigger. It is coming in right at $120, and that's not bad because you're getting the trigger shoe, the trigger bar, the connector, and that reset spring. So some others in the market are a little bit more expensive, some are a little bit cheaper, but you're getting what you pay for when it comes down to those most time. And this is a little bit more of a tuned system. Now, talking about that tuned system, this thing is light. As you saw on those trigger pulls, this bad boy is coming in right at about 4 to 4.5 pounds. It was very consistent right there at the 4.5, maybe a tad under a couple times. I've done a bunch of pull tests on it. It's broken pretty well. Once you start getting down to that 4 pound mark, that's very light for anything other than maybe a range or a competition gun. Remember, it doesn't take much for you to get out there, especially on something that light, and let that thing go. Now, with that reduced power striker spring in there, it got down to like 3.5 or below. Now, for me, that is a little bit too much when it comes to a striker fired system. And if you've ever had this thing pointed at something or somebody and you've pulled back to that wall, you're going to understand why I'm saying that might be a little bit too light for something that's a carry striker trigger. Well, that's what I've got for you all today. I hope you enjoyed checking this Excommunicado trigger out from the people over at Boogeyman Customs. They're doing really cool stuff over there. They're located out in Tucson, Arizona. Check their website out if you're interested in anything. All the rest of that stuff you see here, I'll leave some links down below for you. Check out that Patreon if you're interested in supporting the channel, or you can use any of those links down below because it really does help out the channel. Of course, check out Shall Not Comply for that sweet freedom swag. You guys get out there and enjoy some range time. Remember, if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. I will see you guys on the next one.